All right, well, welcome to our Austin Energy Green Building Seminar on Green Building Incentives. This is our bi-monthly seminar series highlighting sustainability topics in the built environment. Our sincere apologies again for the link issue earlier. Before we dive into that information, we'll start with a few announcements of local events and put the direct links in chat now. Our AEGB e-learning platform offers on-demand courses so you can earn continuing education credits at your convenience. We upload recorded webinars and other virtual learning resources like tours, workshops, and case studies. Log in to register and see what's new. Register for ULI Austin's January breakfast on new building methods to explore how emerging building approaches are reshaping projects while tackling why new technologies and materials matter. Innovators in top-down construction, nano-concrete technologies, mass timber, and modular design will share how they're reshaping the industry. Get all the details on their website. Check out the Urban Plan Workshop hosted by ULI Austin. This annual event is a dynamic hands-on learning experience where participants step directly into the world of urban development. Through this project-based simulation, teams confront the real-life forces, trade-offs, and risks that shape how our communities grow. Learn more and register on their event page. USGBC Central Texas is hosting a webinar on passive building design. Sign up to learn more about passive building projects and practical strategies for achieving passive building certification. More information and registration is available on their event calendar. Did you know that the City of Austin has a Land Development Academy? In February, they're hosting a two-part series on water reuse, featuring projects with on-site systems and projects connected to the city's Purple Pipe system. Sign up for these webinars and check out their offerings on their Speak Up Austin page. AEGB education events for 2026 have been posted on our Learn and Connect page. Check back there soon to register for our March webinar, Mastering Manual J and CommCheck. This seminar is being submitted for AIA learning units, GBCI CE hours for lead professionals, and AICP for all of those that attended the entire webinar. All certificates will be emailed. A follow-up email will be sent with links to the recorded webinar and other resources. It will take a little extra time for video editing the seminar. We will be adding this to our e-learning platform as well. And here is the AIA Equality Assurance slide, and these are our learning objectives for the seminar. And if you have any question during our speakers' presentations, be sure to use the Q&A window throughout the seminar. We've scheduled time at the end of the seminar to discuss them, but for any of those that we don't get to, we'll answer those questions after their presentation and send them with our follow-up. Our session today is Green Building Incentives. As policies and funding options change, it's important to stay aware of programs that can help support green building. This seminar will give a clear overview of current incentives for energy efficient and high-performing building design. Industry experts will share updates on which incentives are available, who can use them, and how they work. Attendees will leave with practical, ready-to-use ideas for leveraging rebates and financing options across building types. Our first speaker is Jacob Goldman, Vice President of Energy Tax Savers. Jacob has a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from the University of Buffalo and an MBA from the University of Maine at Orano. He is the co-author of numerous articles published in Building Operating Management, Worship Facilities Magazine, Unit Magazine, Green Lodging News, International Parking Institute, Corporate Business Taxation Monthly, and Certify. He is a nationally recognized award-winning speaker on the subject and has presented to hundreds of corporations, architectural firms, engineering firms, accounting firms, local chapters, including AEE and USGBC Green Schools Conference, as well as various national conferences. With that, I will turn it over to you, Jacob.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. So we're going to ramp it up. We're going to talk about tax. Let's talk about tax. Woo! So this is probably the most important slide. There's a QR code. You're going to want to take out your phone. You want to snap a picture of that QR code. a link will pop up. You click that link, it'll auto create an email. You hit send, and you'll get a copy of all these slides. And by the way, people of the future, the QR code still works into the future. You might get a slightly different presentation, the more up-to-date presentation, but it will work into the future. So if you're seeing this on a recording, don't hesitate to shoot that QR code and you'll get a copy of the slides. We're going to talk about the IRA. The energy credits, Section 48, Section 48E. These are incentives for commercial building owners, and in institutional, municipal, not-for-profit. These are for kind of business type buildings. This is not for residential type buildings, or single family homes. This is for businesses. And we're going to talk about the elective pay, bonus credits. We'll talk about the big beautiful bill, and then we'll finish up on a couple topics related to the big beautiful bill. And last chance to get that QR code. So take out your phone, shoot the QR code there, and hit send on that auto email, and you'll get a copy of these slides. You're going to want those slides. Okay, here it is. So there are two incentives. There used to be just one. It used to be Section 48, but when 2025 came around, a whole bunch of technologies moved out of 48 and only one technology stayed in Section 48. All the other technologies either died, there was no more incentive, or they moved into Section 48E as an incentive. So there's now two different incentives. There's Section 48 that only has ground source heat pump projects. So if you have a bore field and you're going into a heat pump or a chiller, that's your ground source heat pump. That's Section 48. Everything else like solar, wind, thermal storage, battery, all that moved into Section 48E. The incentive levels are the same, but you'll notice later on, especially as it relates to the big beautiful bill, that there's a lot of differences in what's allowed and what's not allowed. Section 48, basically no changes whatsoever because of the big beautiful bill. Section 48E, some significant changes. So the incentive for both these sections start off at 6%. So it's a misnomer that it's a 30% credit. It actually is a 6% credit. But if you do the right things, there's all these bonuses. So one of those bonuses is the 5-time bonus. It turns 6% into 30%. There's a domestic content bonus. If you happen to be still at the 6% level, it's a 2% bonus. Your 6% goes to 8. But it also is eligible for the 5-time bonus, so 2% turns into 10. So you could go from 6 to 30 to 40. There's an energy community bonus that would take you up from 40 to 50%. Half off sale on ground source, half off sale on solar. So there's tremendous value if you can stack some of these incentives. There's also a low income bonus. It's only available in certain areas and certain conditions, and it's only available for solar, battery, and wind. So if you're doing solar, battery, and wind, there's a potential for another 10 or maybe even another 20% credit. So 70%, you can get a 70% credit for a solar project, for example, if you happen to be doing all the right things in the right places to qualify. The really interesting part of the Inflation Reduction Act was they made these same incentives that used to only be available for taxpayers, they made them available for other entity types. They made these same tax incentives through Section 6417. They made them available for government. They made it available for not-for-profit. They made it available for tribal. So they made it available. Now, we've actually gotten hundreds of $millions of checks for school districts, municipalities, states, not-for-profits. Checks are actually flowing. You can actually get what's called the elective pay. Now, there's one category that cannot qualify, one government category that doesn't qualify. That's federal projects. That'd be like moving chairs around the Titanic. There is no way for a federal project to get a direct payment for elective pay. It's only for state and local and municipal, and not for profits and tribal. Where you get that. But because there's this added way to get these incentives, the incentives right here to get all these incentives for these government and not-for-profits, they did put in some other conditions. So one of those conditions is that you do have to pre-file. You have to pre-register your project, and obviously you pre-register for your project after your project is placed in service. Let's restate that. Your project has to finish and then you pre-register. Okay, it sounds funny, I know, But what you're doing is you're pre-registering for the credit. You're informing IRS, by the way, we finished a project. We want to go for this credit. What happens is you provide some information to IRS. They then send you a registration number. Only when you have a registration number in hand are you able to file for the tax credit. So for your not-for-profits and state and local governments and municipalities, you do need to pre-register, and it's a step that you take post-project. Another little nuance, if you're using tax exempt financing or tax exempt bonds, there is a haircut. There's a reduction in your incentive. So let's say you qualify for a 30% level, but you paid for the whole project with a bond, with a tax exempt bond. So instead of a 30% credit, you're going to get a 25.5% credit. So where did I get 25.5? That's a 15% haircut off of 30. So 15% of 30 is 4.5. 30 minus 4.5, 25.5. If you qualify at the 40% level, then it's a 34% credit. If you qualify at the 50% level, it's a 42.5% credit. Whatever level you qualify at, if you're using tax exempt bonds, there's a haircut, and you're going to have to reduce the incentive. There's another haircut called the domestic content haircut. For ground source and ground source alone, that haircut is a 10% haircut. But for other technologies, it could be a head cut. You lose out the entire incentive if you don't meet it. So if you're doing solar or thermal storage in 2026, or wind, if you don't meet this domestic content requirement, then there is no incentive whatsoever. So on ground source, there's only a 10% haircut, but and once again, here's one of those things where Section 48 and Section 48E have slightly different rules. So ground source has a 10% haircut. Everything else has what I'll call a head cut if you don't meet the requirement. So how do you meet the requirement? There's three ways to meet the requirement. One way is your project is under a megawatt, which means under 284 tons of cooling, a 3.4 million BTUs of heating, or 1 megawatt if you're doing solar or wind, for example. That's one way. So if you're a small project, smaller than those levels, there's no haircut whatsoever. If you meet the domestic content requirement, I'll touch on the domestic content requirement. If you meet that requirement, then there's no haircut. The only other way is if you started your project before 1/1/2024. So if you started your project in 2023, no haircut. So there's three ways to avoid that. Otherwise, there's a 10% haircut for ground source, or a head cut, 100% haircut for solar, thermal storage, wind for your projects that start construction in 2026. Slightly different if you started in 2025, but in 2026, it's 100% head cut. We've had a lot of success. Here's some examples: geothermal, solar projects, schools. We do a lot of schools, transit centers. We're working on a state project. The state is doing a project on a building, and these are actual checks. These checks were actually mailed from IRS. They've cashed these checks. The check went into the bank account. So this is real money for this, and we're over $100 million in actual checks received for our clients. So very valuable for the elective pay community, which is your government, not-for-profit, state and local governments, and municipalities. It's also available on the commercial side. So your Googles of the world, if you're a commercial entity, you can get these same incentives as a tax credit on your tax return. You do not have to pre-file. You don't have to do any of those extra steps. You just put the filing on your tax return. So how do you get the bonuses? So the first bonus is a 5-time bonus. There's two ways to get the 5-time bonus. One way is to move your credit from 6% to 30%. So one way to do that is by, once again, there's your 1 megawatt, being under a megawatt. So if you have 284 tons of cooling or 3.4 million BTUs per hour, that's the megawatt level for those type of technologies. If you're under that, then you get the 5-time bonus automatically. 6% turns into 30%. But if you're larger than a megawatt, larger than 284 tons, larger than 3.4 million BTUs per hour heating, then the only way you get the 5-time bonus is by meeting a prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirement. And those are two separate requirements. The prevailing wage is your Davis-Bacon prevailing wage. You have to meet the prevailing wage for Davis-Bacon, and then you have to meet certain apprenticeship requirements for the labor working on your project. So it's very important that you get an understanding of that. Because of the length of time that we have for this presentation, I don't get into that in much detail, but in order to get that 5-time bonus on your bigger than a megawatt projects, you have to meet prevailing wage and apprenticeship, both of those things. So domestic content bonus, how do you meet the domestic content bonus? So it depends, once again, it depends on uh, if you're doing section 48 or section 48E. So for ground source, for both 48 and 48E, all structural steel and iron on the project has to be smelted, melted, formed, manufactured in the United States. 100% of your structural steel and iron. That's not all the steel and iron on the project. That's the structural steel and iron on the project. So that has to be 100% domestic. It has to be smelted, melted, formed, manufactured here in the United States. For the other category, it's called manufactured products, and we're talking about all the manufactured products on your eligible project. So let's talk about a ground source project. We're talking about the piping and the heat pump and those things. But in addition to that, we're talking about pipe hangers. We're talking about ductwork, insulation, all those manufactured products. You have to reach a certain level of domestic overall as an average of all the things. You have to reach that level. So for ground source, that's section 48, it's 40%. It's stuck at 40%. But for projects that are not ground source, that are solar, wind, thermal storage, if you start your project in 2026, the percentage is 50%. You need to be 50% domestic. And if you start your project after 2026, you have to be 55% domestic. So it's very important that you make sure you're sourcing domestic product from your suppliers, because that can help you get this added bonus, which at the low 6% level is a 2% bonus, but at the 30% level, it's a 10% bonus. It moves 30 to 40%. So it's important to know where your structural steel and iron comes from, and then all the manufactured product has to average out to either the 40, the 50, or the 55% based on which incentive you're going for. Now, once again, I emphasize that you're averaging out. The reason I emphasize that is you could have like a controls that's made in China, for example. That's okay. You just take that at 0%. But you need something else that makes up for that 0% to average out at the 40%. So wait, there's more. There's another bonus. There's the energy community bonus. So once again, it's a 2% bonus at the low end. It's a 10% bonus at the high end. If you ask for a copy of my slides, you'll get all these links that link to the map that you can see if your project is in an energy community. So you'll have to go to the link and determine if you're located in an energy community. Basically, what does it mean? It means that that area gets a large amount of its workforce is in the coal, oil, and natural gas, and that same area has higher than average unemployment. Or there was a coal-fired plant that was closed in that jurisdiction, or there was a coal mine closed in that jurisdiction. So if some of your labor was involved in kind of the classical energy fields, that's how an energy community is determined. And if you happen to be in one of those energy communities, you get a 2 or 10% bonus. So very valuable. And then there's that low income bonus available just for solar and wind. That low income bonus can be 10 or 20% depending on which category you qualify for. The difference on the low income bonus is that you actually have to apply for it, and you have to win, kind of like you get put into like almost like a lottery, and you have to win your credit. And that application window, just so you're aware, for those of you interested in solar, for the low income bonus, if you happen to be in a low income community, the application window is 30 days long, and the annual one opens up February 2nd. So and you have to be under contract but not yet completed in order to apply in that 30-day window. Under contract, not yet completed, in order to apply for that low income bonus to get an even more 10 or 20%. So now we're going to touch on the big beautiful bill. And so there were some changes to the incentives from the big beautiful bill. Section 48, the ground source was not changed at all. The elective pay wasn't really changed, but some of the incentives that affect elective pay were changed. 179D will start sunsetting. You have to begin construction before 6/30/2026. If you're doing EV charging, you got to finish. You got to be placed in service before 6/30/26. There's some accelerated depreciation. Ground source no longer qualifies for it. Solar and wind, amazingly, still qualifies for accelerated depreciation. 5-year makers. A little strange. Solar and wind now on Section 48E starts a sunsetting process, and you need to potentially be done by 12/31/2027, or if you begin construction before July 4th this next year, then you get 4 years. You get a 4-year window, but you got to begin construction. The other part for solar and wind is you have to, and also for all the other technologies, thermal storage and batteries, you now need to meet a foreign entity of concern rule. So the 48E now has to meet a foreign entity of concern rule. 48 does not. Ground source does not need to meet foreign entity of concern. Solar, wind, thermal storage, battery, those now need to meet a foreign entity of concern. And there's 3 rules, and we'll go over those in a minute. So let's talk about beginning of construction, because some of those sunsets are related to when you begin construction. So there's the physical work test, which you're actually doing physical work of a significant nature. Unfortunately, significant nature is undefined, but you do need to start doing physical work before that sunset date. So July 4th, for example, if you want 4 years to do your solar project. So physical work of a significant nature, but physical work does not include site preparation. It doesn't include surveying, permitting. And the other part is you have to be doing the physical work on the eligible project cost. So if, let's say, you're doing a solar project on the top of your brand new building, the fact that you dug the basement does not start work on the solar project necessarily. So you have to start physical work on the eligible project cost, on the solar eligible project cost. So it can be a little bit difficult to hit some of those deadlines if you're part of a new construction project, but you do need to meet it on eligible project cost. There's a whole nother way to meet the beginning of construction. It's the 5% safe harbor. We never recommend 5% safe harbor. We recommend 7 or 8% just in case you go over budget. So that's important to know. This method, this 5% safe harbor, is not available for your solar projects if you're over 1.5 megawatts. So the only way you can start construction on a solar project from here forward is physical work test if you're bigger than 1.5 megawatts. But how do you know if you've made the payment or not? So if you're on what's called a cash-based accounting, all you have to do is take money out of your pocket and spend it. You've met the requirement. If you spent the money on a cash-based accounting, but most entities are not cash-based accounting. They're accrual-based accounting, which means you need to accrue the expense. To accrue the expense, the one thing you don't necessarily need is an actual payment. So you could pay for the entire project and accrue nothing, and you could pay none of your project and accrue a whole bunch. And so it is important that you talk with the accounting firm of the entity taking the incentive to determine if they met the accrual rules for any sort of beginning construction item. But in general, what are those accrual rules? In general, the accrual rules is you have a binding written contract for the project. You have a invoice for something like a service related to the eligible project or an item related to the eligible project. And then here's the kicker. It's not payment. You don't need a payment of that invoice. What you do need in general is delivery. You need delivery of that service or item in order to meet the start of construction rules for accrual-based accounting. That wouldn't meet it for cash-based accounting, but meets it for an accrual-based accounting. So to accrue an expense, you need binding written contract, you need an invoice for an item or a service, and then you need to have that item or service delivered before that beginning construction date. The date of that delivery makes the beginning of construction. Okay, foreign entity concern. This is brand new. This is not for ground source. That's section 48. 48E does not need to meet this. It's all your 48. 48 doesn't need to meet it. 48E does need to meet it. So solar, wind, thermal storage, battery, those things need to meet these 3 tests. There's the entity test, there's the material assistance test, and there's the payment test. The payment test doesn't go in for about 2 years, so you don't really need to worry about that one right this second. But the other 2 you definitely need to worry about. So the entity test is you cannot be a foreign entity of concern. You can't be a foreign influence entity. You can't be a specified foreign entity. And we have a lot of projects that are in schools, for example, and you might be surprised that a school could actually be a foreign entity concern. And you might ask, how is that possible? Well, the rules haven't come out yet from IRS, and we think they're coming out maybe this week. So in short order, we're going to have the rules. It sounds like, but how could a school district be a foreign entity concern? One of the rules says if 15% or more of your debt is owned by a foreign entity concern, then you're a foreign entity concern. Was originally issued to a foreign entity concern. So if a school district has bonds that are 20 years old, if those bonds were originally issued to a foreign entity concern, then the school district is a foreign entity concern if 15% or more of all their bonds outstanding is owned, it was originally issued to a foreign entity concern. So there's all sorts of different ways. It's who owns your company, who's on your board, what's your debt like, who owns your debt. Those types of things are going to determine if you as an entity can even take the solar incentive, because entities that are foreign entities concerned do not get these incentives at all. You do not get these incentives at all. That entity test goes into effect the first tax year that begins after 7/4/2025. So what does that mean? If your tax year started January 1, then already you're in your first tax year. You can't be a foreign entity of concern and get this incentive. But there's some school districts that are like July 1 to June 30th. Those ones start July 1. So if you start your project, if you finish your project after July 1st, then that school district is going to have to meet this entity test and determine if they're a foreign entity concern. Probably the more difficult one is the material assistance test. That is, where's all your material coming from? It really can't be coming from foreign entities of concern. And what does that mean? That means entities related to China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran. Now, from a solar perspective, for example, you got to worry about China. And I saw a report that 90% of all solar cells, the little cells that make up the modules, the solar modules, 90% of them are coming from China or Chinese companies. So you're going to have to navigate around that. That is in effect for projects that start this year. So it's already in effect. So if you're doing a solar project, you now have to purchase panels that are not from China, the panel itself is not from China, and the cells inside of the panel are not from China. Same issues with batteries, same issues with anything on thermal storage. You're going to have to prove that a certain percentage of your project is not from China. And here's those percentages. So for solar, wind, and batteries, solar and wind, it's on the right-hand side. So projects started in 2026. You're not allowed to have more than 40% coming from foreign entities of concern. Then it goes to 45, 50, 55, and 60. But if you're doing thermal storage or battery storage, those batteries are thermal, they start at 55% and it goes up to 75. So we're looking forward to the guidance. The guidance is going to come out, we think, pretty soon. Hopefully it softens some of these issues, but you never know. With IRS, they are usually take the law pretty literally. So we're going to need to see what happens on some of these tests for material assistance and for entity. We're hopeful. We sent in comments to IRS to say, hey, school districts and municipalities should not have to meet the entity test. There's no way that they're foreign entities of concern, but we'll see if they listen to us. So with that, we got another opportunity for the QR code. If you take out your phone, you can shoot the QR code. It'll auto-generate an email. You hit send and you'll get a copy of all these slides. I know we went through this very quickly. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I'll address some questions after when the question and answer period opens up. And thank you so much for your time.
All right, well, thank you, Jacob. I appreciate that information, and I'm looking forward to the guidance that maybe comes out this week. Fingers crossed. Up next, our speaker is Ryan McCormick. Ryan is a founding member of Lone Star PACE, helping to launch the firm in 2017. He serves as a program administrator, playing a key role in expanding commercial property assessed clean energy, CPACE, financing across Texas. Ryan holds a Series 50 license as a registered municipal advisor, bringing specialized expertise to transactions that drive economic development and public benefit through furthering the state's energy and water conservation goals. With a strong background in finance and mortgage lending, Ryan works closely with property owners, developers, contractors, and local governments to broaden stakeholder understanding and facilitate projects that implement utility conservation and reduction measures. Through his leadership in program administration, Ryan helps channel private capital into new construction, acquisition rehabilitation, and asset repurposing projects, supporting property improvements that promote sustainability and contribute to long-term economic growth across Texas. Ryan holds a Bachelor of Arts in Marketing and Nonprofit Management from the University of North Texas, blending financial knowledge with a strong understanding of community development. Take it away, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I appreciate that. Well, so happy to have everyone here during their lunch break to learn more about these programs that incentivize, whether they're federal or state or here, them being private in nature. So we're going to talk about PACE financing, what it is, what it isn't, who it's for, and who it might benefit. So with that, let's get started. You might be asking yourself, right, who is this Lone Star PACE? Why are we talking right now with Austin Energy and what the benefit is to everyone here on the call today? Well, as Caitlin said, we're a program administrator. We handle the part of local government in a transaction. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's going to be private dollars into private projects, but there is a governmental aspect to this transaction, and we do that on behalf of local government. We represent 60% of the population of Texas right now, and we make the transactions seem as private sector as possible, so closing in weeks and not months. Since 2020, we have facilitated $425 million in public benefit projects, and these are about $2.5 billion for the total project size. So what do? Well, we administer these current projects, right? We do the compliance on them on the ongoing side. We go to cities and counties and we help expand the reach and accessibility of the program. We say, hey, here is a tool that was enacted as a state level, but we'll get you started and help you create the program and then administer it on your behalf. That way, city and county staff aren't burdened by anything extra to do. We educate and train stakeholders, pretty much everyone around a commercial real estate transaction. I know that the audience today is varied, but this is what we do. We do outreach. We'll have one-on-one coffees. We'll meet with economic development corporations, local officials, property owners, commercial real estate attorneys, pretty much everyone around the transaction. And we help put these projects together, right? We facilitate the future projects. We glossed over this, and let's go ahead and drill down a little bit more. What is PACE or CPACE? PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, or sometimes called CPACE, to designate the commercial side for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. In 2013, Governor Perry, in his wisdom, knew that as Texans, we really don't like to be told what to do. So if we're going to further the state's energy and water conservation efforts, he would much rather be associated with a carrot approach than a stick approach. As the previous presenter mentioned, a lot of rebates, a lot of incentives, a lot of things that say, hey, do the right thing, but we're going to help you make financial sense when you so do that. If you further the state's energy and water conservation efforts, the property or the project sponsor gets access to investment grade capital they otherwise wouldn't have access to through a special assessment lien that has the same status as ad valorem taxes on the property. I know that sounds like a mouthful. Let's kind of take a look at it high level. If there's improvements in a district, let's say there's some sewer improvements or a sidewalk improvements, a lot of times those improvements are all shared between all the properties that have that sewer or sidewalk, right? They all take a little piece of that to finance those improvements. PACE takes that same idea that's been around since Ben Franklin and says, hey, let's just have a single asset have all the liability for all of these public benefit improvements. All the improvements are on one asset, all the liability is on one asset, but the mechanism is the same. PACE takes the financing and links it to the property. So people sometimes think of it as property linked financing. These projects need to have a public benefit. As mentioned, you can't build or create the most legally inefficient building you can possibly build, which that means a code building. We need these properties that are going to be consuming utilities for 30, 40, 50 years to exceed local code at the time that they're being built and permitted. The property owner, it's a voluntary assessment. The only time that these property owners are going into PACE financing is if it makes sense to them, right? So no one's saying you have to do this, and it's a lot more amicable to all parties involved than just simply raising code. Raising code is great. We want something better than that. As we know, there's kind of a split incentive sometimes because construction costs are higher, and honestly, pretty much everyone on the call knows things are getting value engineered to death. And if we're going to keep these utility conservation measures that everyone wants, but sometimes when push comes to shove, they get let out, we do need to finance, have some financial incentives for them to be done. The assessments are paid over the useful life of the improvement. So on acquisition rehab or acquisition and reposition, a building that's out there that has deferred maintenance, you're looking at probably a 20-year assessment term. And for new construction, it's typically going to be a 30-year term. So what's eligible? Effectively anything that is privately held. So we can't do a public library or a public university, but we can do pretty much all the other flavors of commercial real estate. Multifamily, industrial, hospitality, mixed use, and we've even done some data center transactions. Residential does not qualify unless it's 5 or more for multifamily. And what does qualify? Well, anything that we can show has a demonstrable reduction in utility consumption or increase of that efficiency. A lot of this stuff is going to be things that are going into a property anyway on an acquisition reposition. Commercial real estate people, they'll take a look at a building and they'll say, yeah, you don't see the value in it. I'm going to create something else with it. I'm going to look at it. But a lot of times it's the stuff that you don't see that's the biggest cost. And this is a great way for PACE financing to come in and get better equipment than they would put in if they were just going to be going to code. So HVAC, lighting, envelope improvements, plumbing, elevators, and solar. So we even had some interest in geothermal. I know there was geothermal discussed previously. There's some really interesting ways and creative ways to use PACE financing, but for new construction, you need to exceed code by 5 to 10% on a square foot basis for efficiency. These aren't lead projects exclusively. We want to make sure that the program is available to more property owners than less, because there's very few lead projects that get done every year, and we're able to help those, and we've done a number of those. But as far as property owners getting their buildings built and getting built better, that just helps everyone in the community have better assets. So where are we? Once again, we represent 60% of the population of our great state of Texas. You can see it here. You can go to our website to see the program here, and you can see if something's in your area. What do we do? It's 2026 right now. What did we do last year? We were on $86 million of financing. The total projects were about $250 million, but we did some industrial, multifamily, hospitality, a data center, and a few office. So pretty much everything that's going to be out there that's going to qualify for PACE financing. Before you all roll your eyes, you're looking at this and say, great, we're going to talk about financing, we're going to talk about bank, we're going to look at spreadsheets, this, that, and the other. This is going to be the one piece where we're going to go ahead and make sense of it on why commercial real estate owners and people around a commercial real estate transaction are putting in utility conservation measures instead of not and leaving those out, because it makes financial sense to them. A lot of companies will have great aspirational goals, but as mentioned, when push comes to shove, these things may get left out. PACE financing is a way for these improvements to be left in. And if you look at it, we can drill down and see higher cost debt is replaced with lower cost debt. That's really in summation of what it is. PACE is financing. It's not an incentive or rebate where you're getting like tax abatements or anything like that. It's private dollars into private projects, but there's a governmental aspect. Basically, these projects are now public benefit projects whenever they exceed code by a certain percentage. And when they do that and they do the right thing, they're able to get attractive financing. So when can PACE be used? This is the biggest question. It's like, when do we start thinking about this? PACE is very creative and very flexible. It can fill up to 35% of the project's capital stack. So if it's a $100 million project, the appraisal comes for $100 million, PACE can finance up to $35 million of it. So it's a pretty big chunk of, the total capital stack. For pre-construction, you're going to keep your sustainability components. You saw in the previous graph, they're going to lower the overall weighted cost of capital, and it's they're going to have better overall utility consumption on long-term operating costs because they're consuming less utilities. Deferred maintenance. So we talked about new construction when things are going vertical. A lot of times, property owner or their team just looks at stuff and says, "Hey, I don't have enough money to pay for $1 million HVAC unit or a chiller. I'm just going to Band-Aid it." And they're going to take inefficient equipment and just Band-Aid it and do the bare minimum because they're running on cash flow. And if they are going to get financing, that financing is going to come from a bank and it's going to be maybe 20% down and be a 7-year term. That really makes it a lot of times to where they just kick the can down the road. And this terrible, inefficient equipment or leaky envelope or roof that just has holes in it, it's just left out outstanding. We can do better than that. With PACE financing, we can take everything that we show has a demonstrable reduction in utility consumption and you're exceeding code and finance it. So if a facilities manager were to snap their fingers and take care of everything that wasn't facade, likely they can with PACE, right? HVAC, windows, roof, lighting, all that stuff that they just don't have money for, PACE financing is able to help with that. They're able to further the state's energy and water conservation efforts and get a building that's better. And it's something that we don't think about, but if you ever go into an area and you kind of feel it, it's like, this area is kind of blighted, or this building is kind of blighted. It's hard to put your finger on it, but I think most people on the call today know it's the bones. A lot of people take a building and they'll do a remodel and they'll do facade, but it's the bones of that building that really make it uncomfortable, high utilities, but that's the biggest cost, so it typically gets neglected. With PACE financing, you can take care of that, take care of the blight off the building, make it healthier, and make it an asset to the community. And that's what we like to see. PACE financing can be used mid-construction and post-construction. So we can do new construction, we can do acquisition rehab when someone's coming over and trying to reposition it. During the middle of construction, we can help with cost overruns. Everything's in flux. We're seeing this all the time. You plan for some nice utility conservation measures, but tariffs, things like that, the GC is going over budget, you start cutting. And what comes first? Well, the efficiency stuff, because it's a little bit more expensive. And so it gets value engineered out. Well, now you can keep it with PACE financing, right? If you're able to keep those buildings' original intent to exceed code, if there are cost overruns, you can unlock attractive long-term financing. It can be done post-construction. If you build a building and it's great, you can get rewarded for that. You can recapitalize and take out some of your higher debt, make the capital stack more healthy, and get credit for doing the thing that you did. Even if you don't know about it until a little bit later, it can be 24 months post-construction. So we started a couple minutes late today, so I'm going to be brief. We're going to go through these pretty quick, and then we'll end. Hall Arts Hotel, LEED Gold certified here in Dallas. Great project, got credit for what it did, right? So absolutely PACE financing can be used for LEED certification buildings. It's a great look. If a property owner needs debt, it is very, very attractive. This one won a couple awards, the DBJ 2025 Most Creative Financing. Viva Center, Harris County. This one is in Tomball. This was the old HP Compact flagship campus before they moved out, and it said vacant. It got bought by a logistics company, and they realized that they had data lines and they had power. So they put a small data center in there. Most data center companies have more money than they need, and they don't really need debt. This was a smaller one. Since then, we've done some other transactions for data centers. This is good because the building's being repurposed from something that's it's inefficient to more efficient equipment to help facilitate the transition for the data center. This one won a couple of awards as well through Commercial Observer and Red News. And a biotech, Wichita County. This is one of my favorites. This is an old GM Delphi facility that sat vacant for a number of years. This asset wasn't really adding any value. It was sitting there vacant. It was an eyesore to the community. And with PACE financing, it is now the second largest industrial fiber processing facility in the world. And you might ask yourself, industrial fiber, what does that mean? Hemp. I thought to myself, what are they going to be doing? Are they going to be making like tie-dye t-shirts? Like, what are they doing with this? Well, actually, you'll see here shortly, they've got offload for the textile for the hemp fiber with Levi's jeans. So you'll start seeing, hemp fiber jeans. In summation, why are people doing PACE financing? Well, it's to support sustainability. This is the whole reason that we do it. We need to make sure that we are being good stewards of the resources that are here, because we don't want to overwhelm the grid. People are coming here to Texas, population's growing, consuming utilities. How do we keep this done? There's also no down payment, right? PACE financing really, really helps because it's 100% financing for the chunk, that 35% of the capital stack up to that it's able to facilitate. There's no down payment. 10 to 20 year amortization, so longer term than most. You're going to have increased property value because the asset's being built better. It's non-accelerating. You can never accelerate any type of assessment. So even if a payment's missed, you can't accelerate the full assessment. Just like any other sewer or sidewalk assessment, local government just needs to have that payment for that 1 year. And then often you're getting immediate cash flow as compared to other forms of financing, right? Just because the weighted average of your capital dropped, that brings cash flow. And at the end of the day, commercial real estate property owners really care about cash flow. And if you can get their attention by saying you can help your building's performance and also give yourself cash flow, that's a winning argument to get the things that we need done here with sustainability. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions or discuss projects.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan. It was exciting to learn more about PACE. I was actually just at the Hall Arts Hotel for a wedding, and it's a beautiful building. So it's great to know that PACE helped finance it. Okay, so up next we have Holly Prosser with Austin Energy. Holly graduated from Trinity University with a bachelor's degree in English and anthropology. She then joined the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Albania teaching English to high school students. After the Peace Corps, she attended the LBJ School of Public Affairs and graduated with a master's degree. She then joined Frontier Associates as an energy analyst, working on DSM, energy efficiency, and utility program evaluation. 9 years ago, she joined Austin Energy as an environmental program coordinator to lead the Weatherization Assistance Program. 6 years ago, she became an environmental conservation program manager over the Weatherization Assistance Program and the residential field services staff. And 2 years ago, she became the residential energy efficiency services manager over the residential portfolio. The floor is yours, Holly.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. And thank you, Austin Green Building team, for inviting me here. It's great to be here. And I'm just going to run through some of the rebates and incentives that are offered for our residential customers in Austin Energy service territory. These are going to be customers that live in single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex, or condos and are on our residential rate. Let's see, the first program I'm going to talk about is our Home Energy Savings Program. This is sort of our flagship whole home energy efficiency upgrade program within the residential portfolio. It offers on average about $3,000 per rebate to make upgrades, and I've included some contact information and some websites below for you to look more closely. And just some details about the program itself. The homes need to be a single family, like I said, duplex, triplex, fourplex, or condos, 10 years old or older, and receive electric service from Austin Energy. And you do need to go through one of our participating contractors, and that information is available on our website. The retails, like I said, are about $3,000 per project. We do have a really great offer right now. We partner with Velocity Credit Union to offer low interest loans to customers to finance these projects as well. So you can get a rebate and a loan. And right now that loan is 0%. So we are buying down the loan to 0% through April 30th of 2026. And then we just added a new offering, which we're calling Home Energy Savings Essentials. This is sort of targeting our moderate income customer bracket. It focuses on attic insulation and ceiling, knowing that not everyone can at one time do the full upgrade. So this is an opportunity for customers to still get some energy efficiency savings for their home. And the improvements include replacing an HVAC system, repairing and replacing ductwork, weather stripping, sealing air leaks, air testing, adding attic insulation, installing solar screens, and installing smart thermostats. The next program I'm going to talk about is our Weatherization Assistance Program. It does share the name with the federal DOE program, but this program is entirely locally funded, so we do not receive federal money for this program. It is the low income or income qualified version of the Home Energy Savings Program, basically offering the same set of energy efficiency upgrades, but at no cost to qualifying customers. And this is some contact information at the bottom and just describing how the program works. Currently, customers need to be either a customer assistance program discount customer. So these are our income qualified customers that are currently receiving a discount on their utility bills, or they need to be on our medically vulnerable registry list. And those MVR customers are customers who have worked with the city of Austin to provide information about their health status. Typically, these are very critically ill customers, and they're on a registry with the city in case we're having to change their power or turn off their power for repair reasons. We just want to make sure we understand what customers are critically ill. And so customers on that MVR list and who are making 80% or less median family income are eligible for our free weatherization program. The homes need to be 10 years or older, 2,500 square feet or less, around 478,195 value in their home improvement value, excluding the land, and open to homeowners and renters. This includes up to $10,000 in free home energy improvements, again, paid for by Austin Energy. We include 0% interest loans for customers that want to also purchase a new HVAC unit. And then we offer free HVAC replacement for customers on that MVR list. And it's the same set of energy efficiency upgrades, as well as some health and safety upgrades that for those customers. All right. The next program is our appliance efficiency program. This is the standalone rebates portion of the portfolio. The previous two programs focused on whole home efficiency upgrades. This program is about the standalone rebates that we also offer for customers who purchase energy efficient equipment. These are, again, customers that are Austin Energy service territory customers. And the various appliances eligible are HVAC systems, variable speed pool pumps, heat pump water heaters, window AC units, smart thermostats, and solar screens. And basically, this is like a traditional rebate program where you can log into our platform and submit an application along with an invoice or a receipt. And next to last is our instant savings program. This is a way where we've partnered with a local implementer to offer discounts in stores. So it's a way for us to incentivize customers to purchase the more energy efficient option when they're shopping at their local Lowe's or Home Depot. And so it's a point of sale discount for customers. There are some recent upgrades to this program where we've added a website that offers a retail coupon where customers can go onto the website and get a coupon for a higher higher coupon amount. So basically, it's a way for us to verify that they are an Austin Energy customer before giving them, a pretty generous incentive for purchasing something like a heat pump water heater. And then we've recently expanded also our Buy Now portal to allow customers to purchase smart thermostats directly from the website. And this will eventually be expanded to offer smart thermostats that are pre-enrolled into our demand response program, which is called our Power Partner program. And like I said, it's point of sale. There's a list of retailers. There's quite a few retailers, so I encourage you to go to the website and look at some of those retailers. And like I said, it's instant savings discounts in the store, retail coupons, and the Buy Now portal. And there's like a whole host of different improvements that are available. I don't have enough space to put them all on here, so I put a few and invite you all to go to the website to look at what else is available. And finally, I'm going to talk about our school-based education program. This is an education program focused towards sixth graders. It provides sixth grade students in energy efficient kits they can take home, as well as curriculum they can learn in the class on how to be energy efficient. And it's at no cost to teachers and students. And it's through, we're able to implement this through partnership with AISD. We provide workbooks, guidelines, and classroom activities, and it is aligned with our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills Standards. So it's a great way for us to talk to future Austin Energy customers or future customers of the world who will be interested in energy efficiency. So that pretty much ends my presentation, and I will be available for questions at the end of this seminar. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Holly. Exciting to hear about all the residential energy efficiency offerings available. So at this point, I'd like to bring up our final speaker, Katy Hernandez. Katy is a program manager in environmental conservation based in Austin, Texas, with a strong foundation in engineering and sustainability. A proud graduate of Texas A&M University, Katy brings technical expertise and a systems thinking approach to her work, driving innovative solutions to complex environmental challenges. Under the leadership of Joseph Tang and Hamad Chaudhry, Katy leads programs focused on climate resilience, resource efficiency, and community engagement. Her engineering background enables her to translate data and policy into actionable strategies that support long-term ecological and social outcomes. Katy is recognized for her collaborative leadership style, strategic thinking, and dedication to inclusive environmental solutions. She is passionate about empowering communities to participate in conservation efforts and shaping a more sustainable future through cross-sector partnerships. Her career reflects a deep respect for nature and a commitment to using engineering and environmental science to create lasting positive change. I'll pass it to you, Katy.
Thanks, Caitlin. So starting at Austin Energy 9 years ago, I sat right next to Green Building, so I learned a lot from that team. So thank you for inviting me today. Before I get into energy efficiency rebates, I wanted to go over the Austin Energy's 2035 Resource Generation Plan goals, which our team helped develop, including Holly Prosser, who you just heard from. So Austin Energy, like most utilities, have long-term resource plans. In late 2024, City Council approved our latest resource generation plan with goals to 2035. So this sets a number of goals to reduce costs, increase reliability, and reduce environmental footprint. Austin's goal is to be 100% carbon free by 2035. This is a big change. It allows for AE to pursue local installation of utility scale batteries and natural gas peaker plants. This will support lower costs when congestion charges are high on the ERCOT market and ensure local generation during extreme weather events. AE will continue to prioritize customer energy solutions, which falls under the energy efficiency up in the top right corner, with updated goals for DR, solar, and thermal energy storage. So energy efficiency will continue to be emphasized, with the biggest change to our primary performance metric. It's changing from peak summer megawatt reduced to greenhouse gas avoided. So yes, I will be going more into the 907 megawatt by 2027 here in a minute and how we do that. So we do that by offering rebates to appliance equipment, cooling and heating, lighting, load management, new construction, property improvements. Our average rebate for our commercial standard program is about $500 per kW saved, with plans to increase this by 30% in the spring of this year. So if you have projects, you might want to wait until spring and then you'll get the extra 30%. Our main focus will be on HVAC tune-up and replacements, as Austin's lighting profile has mostly changed from fluorescent to LED by now, and the national standard is LED for all new construction projects. Besides HVAC and lighting, we also have commercial kitchen, smart thermostat rebates, rebates on windows and insulation, ERVs, and reflective roof coating. However, if a project does not fall into one of the prescriptive offerings that I just mentioned, the custom technology rebate is kind of a catch-all offering. For example, if you're installing an energy efficient elevator in a high-rise or a mid-rise, that would fall under custom technologies. Our engineers will basically work with you to determine demand and energy savings for any type of technology that is being installed as a retrofit or in a new construction building. On this slide, I wanted to give you a breakdown of one of our most popular rebates, HVAC tune-up. I built this program about 5 years ago, and it's grown to be one of our most popular offerings, which has really been great to see. I assume most of you folks in the seminar live or work in a building that has air conditioning, especially if you live and work in Texas. Performing a tune-up to your system not only saves energy, but it helps extend the life of your system. This specific offering is the most generous tune-up rebate in Texas, if not nationwide. And as I mentioned in my first slides, speaking about AE's resource generation goals, Austin is moving towards reducing greenhouse gases, and tuning up HVAC, especially heat pumps, is a major part of that goal. So we offer rebates from the lowest under 5-ton systems to P-tax, and up to 25-ton systems. Let's see. And we also use co-branded flyers for our participating contractors. So before I end my presentation, I kind of wanted to go into our small business bundle. This is a new program that kind of piggybacks onto our main standard offerings, but this focuses on small businesses. It will cater to our small businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of American business. They're your local restaurant, your church, your mechanic that fixes your car. This program was developed 2 years ago to provide low-cost upgrades to small businesses. Many of these businesses live on a very small margin, and every little bit helps, and we want to help them. So we work with local contractors to meet the needs of a customer. An Austin Energy Inspector will go out to the business to determine what that business may qualify for, and it could be eligible for any one of our standard offerings with an additional 30% bonus. So in order to qualify for this program, 3 energy efficiency measures must be performed. Some challenges we've encountered were focused around this rule that the rule that many contractors focus on only one prescriptive measure, such as HVAC or lighting. This challenge was actually a blessing in disguise, because it kind of forced contractors to work together on these projects. So a lighting contractor would work with an HVAC contractor to help this small business. Or an HVAC contractor would extend their portfolio to do the lighting. So they were growing. So our contractors are growing and learning. A window contractor learned how to install thermostats to be able to participate in our small business bundle program. And it's just been wonderful to see so many small businesses helping other small businesses. So this slide shows a breakdown of the small business bundle program. The main measures for this bundle are thermostat direct install, lighting upgrades, and HVAC tune-up. Lighting especially has a much higher dollar per kW at $900 per kW than the standard commercial rebate of $420 per kW. So that is one of the main reasons why a small business bundle really helps, because we are paying almost 100% of the equipment and installation for these three measures: smart thermostats, LED lighting, and HVAC tune-up. As I mentioned in my previous slide, we also pay out an additional 30% bonus for any other measures like windows, HVAC replacement, insulation, reflective roof coating, or any of our other standard offerings, which could also include custom technologies. So yes, we built this program to help small businesses do what they need to do to upgrade. And in the end, this really helps local Austinites, it helps the city, and ultimately helps the environment as well. So yeah, it's been great to see this program grow over the past 2 years, and hopefully it'll grow even more. We are out of our pilot year, and this year being the second year, we're fully diving in, and we have quite a few businesses coming in to help other businesses. I also wanted to mention that we have a loan option as well. I didn't put it on the slides, but we work with Velocity Credit Union to have 0% interest loans backed by us to pay down the interest and help get these businesses loans if they need a large retrofit or renovation. So yeah, thank you guys. That was all for me. Hope I went quickly. I know we started late.
You're good, Katie. Thank you so much. I appreciate the information, and thanks for working so closely with the Green Building team. So next up, I am going to invite all of the speakers to come back on stage with their cameras on, and my colleague Christian is going to lead a short Q&A portion of this webinar. So thank you, Christian.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know we got off to a little bit of a late start this afternoon, so we'll try and keep our Q&A around 8 to 10 minutes so we can get everyone back to their workday. But our first question today is for Jacob. I know you touched briefly on the prevailing wage and apprenticeship guidelines for achieving the credit bonuses. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so prevailing wage is pretty straightforward. It's Davis-Bacon prevailing wage. You go to sam.gov, put in your location, and you can look up what the prevailing wage rate is for your project. You just need to pay the laborers on your project, meaning your electricians, your sheet metal workers, your pipe fitters. You need to pay them at that rate or higher, including the fringe benefits. On the apprenticeship side, there's multiple requirements within the apprenticeship. There's the labor hour requirement, which is 15% of total labor hours have to come overall for eligible project, have to come from apprentices. There's the participation requirement. This one's complicated, and you should send me an email if you have some questions. But for each and every contractor and subcontractor on the job that has 4 or more laborers over the life of the job, they need at least 1 apprentice. So any contractor or subcontractor working on the eligible project that has 4 or more laborers over the life of the project, not on a daily, like if you have 3 laborers each day, that doesn't mean you didn't have 5 laborers over the life of the project. So if you have 4 or more over the life of the project, then one of them has to be an apprentice. That's the participation requirement. And the last one's the ratio requirement. Where you get your apprentices from a registered apprenticeship program, the program itself will tell you what you're allowed to do as far as apprentice to journey worker. And so you have to be, this is not a floor. The other two are a floor. You got to be above them. This is a ceiling. You got to be below it. They don't want a bunch of apprentices running around unsupervised. So you need to meet those three requirements on the apprenticeship side, and you have to meet the prevailing wage side in order to get that higher level of tax credit if you're bigger than a megawatt.
Thank you. I've got another one for you. You mentioned several of these credits, the registration dates are rapidly approaching, when they'll expire. What credits should people look out for the most to make sure that they've taken action on before they might expire?
So solar is the solar and wind, like there's probably not a lot of wind projects in this group potentially, but solar, you pretty much want to start construction before July 4th, 2026, because then you'll have a 4-year window to finish. If you start construction on July 2nd, then you have to be completed. You have to get PTO from the utility. You have to be completed by December 31st, 2027. That's the big one that's up front. Ground source goes all the way out to the 2030s. Really the biggest one out there is the start of construction for solar before 7/4 gives you a nice long runway to finish the project. Otherwise, the deadline after that, if you don't start by July 4th, you have to be placed in service before December 31st, 2027.
That sounds good. Thank you. Next up, we have one for Ryan. You mentioned briefly that there's some thresholds of efficiency improvements projects have to meet in order to qualify for PACE financing. Can you explain a little bit more about what those thresholds are for each building type and how projects would quantify that?
Sure, absolutely. It's pretty easy. If you look at new construction, you're going to run a comms check and make sure everything is going to be exceeding code. We look for 5 to 10%. If you say 5%, you're going to get a developer that's going to argue 4.5% is 5%. No offense to any developers out there, but we do say 5 to 10% because the bare minimum is going to be 5. As far as acquisition, rehab, or reposition on deferred maintenance, that's going to be a little bit easier. You just need to have everything that's being put in be marginally better than code, right? We can't qualify this as a public benefit project if you're just doing code. That's the lowest bar possible, and we just can't do that. We also like to have the financing be a good look to offset the debt service, the utility savings. It's not a 1-for-1 ratio, but we do like to see some real utility savings in there to help offset it, because unlike the great people at Austin Energy who've partnered with the bank to get 0% financing, there is an interest rate to what we have, and so we try to make sure the property owner is in a good spot whenever they go forward on this. There's an independent third-party review by a licensed engineer in the state of Texas that puts their stamp on it and says that these projections are reasonable. So we do have some guardrails on what is and isn't acceptable for the program, but I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you. Next up, we have one for Katy. You touched on some of the offerings available to small businesses. Can you explain any offerings you have for multifamily properties that might fall under the commercial code or commercial rates?
Yes, that's a great question, Christian. So multifamily, we do have a multifamily program that has its own multifamily rates under residential. However, if a multifamily property wants to participate in the commercial program, they would need to be master meter properties. So if it is a master metered multifamily property, it would qualify for commercial standard offerings. Hope that answers that question.
It does, thank you. And last but not least, we've got one for Holly. Could you explain some of the residential offerings that are available to customers that you don't feel are taken advantage of enough? Like what is some of the best ones for people to pursue that they haven't been?
Our weatherization program, it is really difficult to get customer assistance program discount customers to participate. It's a very tough market. And so I wish I could wave a magic wand, and because it's such a great deal, but I think it's just a very tough hill to climb for the utility to explain to these customers that we're going to be installing all these upgrades to their home at no cost. So I would say that's probably the toughest market that is missing out on the greatest deal that we have. I'd love to see more uptake with our heat pumps and our heat pump water heaters. We've recently increased our heat pump incentives. You know, our 0% financing is really great. So those are things that we are seeing more interest in since we did recently increase the rebates, but spreading the word on that is in a world where all our attentions are, you know, taken by many different things. Getting people excited about replacing their HVAC system is one of the tougher ones, but definitely those are some really great deals, I would say. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. That's going to be all the time we have for our seminar today. Thank you everyone for bearing with us, going a little bit over given our technical difficulties. As a reminder, everyone who registered will receive a follow-up email with resource links and a webinar recording. Today's webinar attendees will receive continuing education credits for self-reporting with GBCI CE hours and AICP CM credits. If you provided your AIA number during registration, we will report your AIA learning units for attending this webinar. If you couldn't attend the entire webinar or wanted to share this information with colleagues, this seminar will also be added to our new e-learning platform in about 3 weeks. On this platform, you can watch the recording and take a quiz to earn CEUs from this course. Check out the current courses available at the link in the chat and log in to get started. Thank you everyone again for attending, and this concludes today's webinar.